Something about Annalyn never quite added up. Not the way she smiled on camera. Not the way she cried when Jovon talked about sacrifice. And definitely not the way her story kept changing just enough to make you second-guess your own memory. Because here's the uncomfortable question a lot of viewers whispered at first, then typed loudly once the season aired. Was Annalyn really in love with Jovon? Or was Jovon just a step on the way to something else? I know what you're thinking. That sounds harsh, accusatory, maybe even unfair. And trust me, when this couple first appeared, most fans wanted to believe in them. A lot of us did. Jovon looked like the kind of guy who loved deeply, maybe too deeply. The kind who would empty his savings, uproot his life, and defend his partner even when the red flags were practically screaming. And Annalyn, she came across soft-spoken, vulnerable, almost fragile. She talked about dreams, about struggle, about wanting stability. She talked about love in that careful way people do when they know millions are watching. But this is where everything quietly fell apart. Because when you start lining up the timelines, the messages, the money, and the moments TLC barely lingered on, a very different story begins to surface. One that feels less like a love story, and more like a transaction wrapped in affection. Jovon wasn't just a boyfriend to Annalyn. He was a provider, a sponsor, a lifeline, and possibly, a means to an end. Now before anyone jumps to defend her, take a breath and stay with me. This isn't about demonizing a woman for wanting a better life. This is about intent, transparency, and whether someone crossed a line while pretending it was love. Because the deeper you go, the more unsettling the pattern becomes. Jovon met Annalyn at a moment when she was desperate for change. She had talked openly about feeling stuck, about limited opportunities, about watching people around her leave while she stayed behind. Those words hit hard for a lot of viewers because they're real. They're relatable. But what wasn't clear at first was how quickly Annalyn began tying her future security directly to Jovon's ability to provide. Not emotionally, logistically. Within months, conversations shifted from connection to paperwork, from feelings to timelines, from, "I miss you," to, "When can we file?" And that alone doesn't prove anything. Plenty of international couples have to talk about visas early. But what raised eyebrows was how one-sided the pressure seemed to be. Jovon was constantly being reminded of what Annalyn had given up, what she was risking, what she deserved in return. Meanwhile, his sacrifices were treated like assumptions. He sold things, took on extra work, sent money regularly, covered expenses that were framed as temporary but never seemed to end. And every time he hesitated, every time he asked for reassurance, the emotional temperature changed. Suddenly Annalyn would pull back. Suddenly she'd question his commitment. Suddenly the relationship felt conditional. And that's where fans started feeling uneasy. Because love doesn't usually come with ultimatums dressed as vulnerability. As the episodes aired, social media didn't just react. It erupted. TikTok clips broke down side-by-side timelines. Reddit threads pulled receipts from old posts Annalyn had deleted. Twitter lit up with arguments between fans who saw a scared woman chasing security and others who saw calculated patience. Some comments were brutal, others heartbreakingly sympathetic. She never looks at him when he talks about forever. Why does she only cry when the visa is mentioned? I wanted to believe her, but my gut won't let me. And then there were the defenders. The ones who said, "You don't know her trauma. You don't know what it's like to want out. Love and immigration can exist at the same time." All of that is true. But here's the part nobody was ready for. Because while viewers were arguing online, something else was happening quietly off camera. Annalyn's behavior started shifting the moment her status felt more secure. Not overnight, not dramatically, slowly, subtly, in ways that are easy to miss unless you're looking for them. She stopped initiating calls, stopped asking about Jovon's day, stopped talking about shared plans that didn't involve location or paperwork. When Jovon tried to talk about marriage beyond the process, she redirected. When he talked about settling somewhere together, she became vague. And when he expressed fear about being used, she didn't reassure him. She got defensive. That's a moment TLC didn't linger on. But if you rewatch it, it's chilling. Instead of saying, "I love you, I'd never do that," she said, "Why would you even think that?" That's not comfort. That's deflection. And this is where the first layer of truth peeled back. Because love, real love, doesn't feel threatened by questions. It leans into them. Then came the second layer. Old acquaintances of Annalyn began speaking up anonymously. Nothing explosive at first. Just patterns. Stories of her talking openly about wanting to leave, about needing an American connection, about relationships being investments. One comment on Reddit said something that stuck with a lot of people. She always talked about love like a strategy. That sentence alone sparked hundreds of replies. Some said it was cultural misunderstanding. Others said it sounded exactly like someone playing a long game. And then, the money. Because Jovon wasn't just sending help. He was sending enough to change Annalyn's lifestyle. Enough that friends noticed. Enough that the urgency around the relationship seemed to spike whenever financial support slowed. When Jovon lost a job opportunity and told her he needed time, Annalyn didn't ask how he was holding up. She asked what that meant for the timeline. That moment broke something in a lot of viewers. Because it wasn't just about a visa anymore. It was about priorities. And then came the mid-story twist. The one that made even supporters pause. It turned out Annalyn had been in communication with another US-based man around the same time she was reassuring Jovon of exclusivity. Not openly romantic, but not innocent either. Flirtatious. Future-focused. Talking about travel. Talking about options. When confronted, Annalyn downplayed it. Said it was harmless. Said Jovon was overreacting. But here's the question that kept coming up. If Jovon was truly the love of her life, why keep a backup plan? That's where everything started feeling less like coincidence and more like calculation. The fourth layer came from something even smaller. A slip. During a casual conversation, Annalyn joked about finally being free once everything was approved. She laughed, quickly corrected herself. But it was too late. Free from what? The distance, the stress, or the obligation? Because Jovon's face changed in that moment. You could see it. Confusion, hurt, a realization he didn't want to have on camera. That's when fans started saying the quiet part out loud. She already checked out. He's just the bridge. And then, the final layer. The one that hit hardest. After filming Wrapped, after most of the process was already in motion, Annalyn began distancing herself publicly. Less couple content. More solo posts. More independence. More new chapter energy that didn't include Jovon. When fans asked about him, responses were vague. When asked about love, she talked about growth. Meanwhile, Jovon still posted about commitment. Still defended her. Still believed. That imbalance is what makes this hurt. Because even if Annalyn convinced herself she loved him at first, something shifted. And instead of being honest, she stayed quiet until the risk was gone. So was she using him? That depends on how you define using. Did she fake every emotion? Probably not. Did she enter the relationship knowing exactly what it could give her? Almost certainly. Did she stay longer than her feelings justified because the outcome mattered more? That's what the evidence suggests. And that's the part TLC didn't want you sitting with. Because this isn't a cartoon villain story. It's messier, sadder, more human. It's about two people wanting different things and one of them holding more power than the other realized. Jovon wanted forever. Annalyn wanted out. And somewhere along the way, love became leverage. So now I want to know what you think. Do you believe Annalyn started with real feelings and lost them? Or do you think this was always the plan, just executed patiently? Because depending on that answer, this story changes completely. And the comments are about to get very interesting.